Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello. Give me one type of yes. Type of yes if you can see me clearly. If you can hear me clearly, please type of yes. I've got an amazing session for all of you. This is going to completely blow your mind. This is one session for all of you. Please hit the like button if you're ready. If you can hear me clearly. If you can see me clearly, please hit the like button. Hit the like button if you can see me clearly. If you can hear me clearly, because you don't want to miss anything today. So if you hear me, please type a one, type of one, type of one. If you're able to see me now, if you hear me clearly, please type a one. I need you guys to do a favor. Share this with your friends. Share the link, right? Share the link to them and tell them join this session now. Because this is totally going to change for you guys into the different pass and a film. So let me start by welcoming all of you that are joining in. How's everyone doing today? Let's see who's in house. How are you, Lucy? Give me a hello, Lucy. How are you doing, Lucy? Uze, welcome to the house. Welcome to the session. Sarada, welcome. Whitney Lodivika, welcome all of you to the session. This will be a fantastic session. Monica, how are you doing? The one and only Uma Majid in the house. Welcome, everyone. Welcome. Let's get more people in, logging on, because this is going to be an amazing session. How are you, Yvette? Welcome, Yvette. Welcome to the session. Welcome, all of you. If you can hear me clearly, I want to make sure you guys can all hear me, and you can all hear me, and you can see me before I start the session, because I don't want you to miss anything today, because this is going to be revolutionary, right? I'm going to show you and teach you things that you've never heard before. You've never seen this done before by any training provider, and this will make the difference for you. So your voice wasn't clear. I don't actually know why everyone's typing one. So just type a one if you can hear me clearly. Sorry, it's probably my internet, because my internet acts up sometimes. Let's see. But just type in yes. Just type in yes if you can hear me clearly now. Please type in a yes and make sure my internet is working fine before we start. So type yes if you can hear me clearly. It's clear now. Daily says it's clear. Fantastic. Great. Lucy, how are you? Right. So today's session, we're going to cover a few things that are going to help you in your revision, make life easy for you, and will literally help some of you pass this exam. Okay. So it's a very important session, and it is a live session, so you could ask me questions. So today's topic is secrets of proven and scientific recall techniques. So I'm going to show you some techniques, the two key ones that have been shown. They've been proven scientifically, and I'm going to show you all the research as well. They've been shown to be the most effective study methods that will help you totally ace not only this exam, any other exam. So we're going to go through a few things. For many years, I've been doing this, and I've noticed some challenges. I've seen some errors that students make, and I've been able to help so many of you succeed just by changing your study strategy. So can you guys all see the slide? If you can see the slide, give me a one, give me a one, give me a one. So I just want to tell you very quickly about how I became fascinated with the subject of recall. So if you can see that slide on there, how I became fascinated with the subject of recall, type 2. Let me make sure you guys can see the slides, because we're going to go through a few slides today because they have a lot of evidence for you. So type 2, there's a delay, or type 1 or type 2. If you can see that slide, how I became fascinated with the subject of recall. So when I was doing my pre-reg year, which is your foundation year now, I remember I was sitting my exam in November. And one of the biggest challenges for me, I wasn't expecting that because I did so well at university. So for university, I really didn't have to repeat an exam until I got to my OSCEs, which I had to do again. But throughout university, I didn't repeat an exam. I felt I was quite smart. I was very good at university. That's what I thought anyway. And so I went through university and I literally sailed through. The biggest challenge I had was when I started my pre-reg year, the foundation year. And when I started, what I found difficult was remembering notes. So I used to read the BNF, and I'm going to read my NICE guidelines and all the requirements, my Gphc framework requirements. But when I used to read, especially the BNF, I used to forget. My challenge was remembering the information. So anyone got that challenge? Give me a 3, give me a 3, that's you. And the biggest challenge for me was remembering stuff. It felt like every time you learn and every time I read, I sort of forgot the information. So that was one of my biggest challenges when I was doing my pre-reg year. The second challenge was I used to struggle to answer questions. So even though I used to read topics, and I'm going to go through my BNF and I'm going to read all these topics, and I felt like I was ready, whenever I did mocks and I did questions, I didn't do too well. So I was either failing my mocks, getting less than 70%. I was literally struggling with a lot of mocks when I was studying, and that used to make me so demotivated. So not only wasn't I remembering things, but even when I remembered something, I was still struggling to answer questions. So if that's you, if you feel that way, like you're struggling to remember, and even when you try to do some mocks and some past questions, it's still challenging, then type 2. Another thing that I used to struggle with was I used to run out of time. So even when I tried to do maybe calculations or some of the clinical questions, just try to time myself, I always used to run out of time. And then my pharmacy was super busy. I used to work in a pharmacy in Northampton that used to do about 22,000 items a month. It was always constantly busy. We always had 2 pharmacists on shift. I was literally a full-time dispenser. I could hardly even go to the toilet. I could do anything. The moment I left that screen, that computer, within 2 seconds, the baskets piling up. And like, Marvin, where are you, Marvin? So it was constant. We always had queues in the pharmacy. And even when I tried to take a time off, I didn't have any of my study days I was entitled to. When I tried to take some study time, we never had enough staff. So I just found myself working. So I used to be so tired after work, and time was going by. And I remember once, probably I was doing my exam in November, and this might have been in July. I remember the other years had done the exam already. And I remember sitting down in my living room, and I just felt so depressed because it's like the reality hit me that I'd not done any work, and that even the work that I'd done, I would just feel like I wasn't going to pass because I wasn't remembering what I was studying. When I learn one thing, then I forget another. I was struggling with my mocks. I wasn't doing well in any of those mock papers. Calculations, I was failing them. Clinical, I was failing them. So I remember just sitting down, and I just felt like for the first time in my life, considering that I was all right at university, for the very first time, I felt I was going to fail the exam. I wasn't prepared. I did not know what to do. And I thought, I'm going to fail this exam because I'm not really doing too well in questions. I'm not really remembering what I'm learning. And I just feel so overwhelmed with all this information. And I had tears almost coming down my eyes. And I thought, what can I do? Right? What can I do? Because right now, it's just not working for me. Right? So I remember just sitting there. I was thinking, I need to find a way out. And at the end, I made a conclusion. I just decided that the reason why this is happening is because, number one, I don't have a good memory. And number two, I'm just not good enough. I'm just not good enough. It feels like everyone else knows stuff, and they've had all this extra study time, and they're all going for the exam. But with me, I didn't have that feeling. So I remember sitting down in my living room and I'm going through the computer. I just thought I was going to type in one question. So I wanted to find out if there was any way that I could study, any way that could help me study quickly, effectively, and that could give me that confidence, because now I had almost zero confidence of passing this exam. I was really down. You wouldn't believe. Many of you see me doing all this clinical now and you're like, wow, you're so smart. Remember all this stuff, Marvin? But when I was doing my pre-reg year, I couldn't remember anything. So I remember sitting down and I was searching on the internet, and then I had this light bulb moment because I came across an article. And this is the article I want to show you now. Right? This article changed everything for me. This is when personally the game changed. If I'm teaching you all this clinical and I'm doing all of this stuff to you and helping you out, it's because of this moment when I was sat down in my living room and I came across this article by a guy named Herman Ebbinghaus. This dude over here, literally, I credit everything I do in terms of passing my exam. I credit all the teachings I give you guys, the combo course I do, the structure, the lessons, the style, everything came from one moment. It was the aha moment, right? That light bulb moment. So for me, this was the guy. This is a guy named Herman Ebbinghaus. I don't even know if you've heard of him. He's a German psychologist, and he'd written a report, done a lot of scientific research, and he had this document called memory. Right? So I was just searching for how can I remember things? Okay, how do I remember what I learned? So he'd written this article about the forgetting curve, which I'm going to go into later on. And this to me was the turning point. Right? This is when I started to learn a few things about the way I was studying. And then I came across another thing when I was reading another line, not in his article, but just random on the internet, that changed everything. And this was what I learned. It's not your ability when I was reading, but it was my study method. It wasn't my ability to pass the exam, or I wasn't good enough. Like I was saying to myself, I'm not good enough. I'm going to fail this exam. I just don't have a good memory. And then I realized at that moment when I read this article, it wasn't my ability, because I've gone through university, I've passed the exams, and I've graduated. So I definitely have the ability. So when I looked at that, it said it was my study method, it was my study technique. It then started to dawn on me, started to make sense. How many of you just give me a yes? Just give me yes. How many of you have had subjects or maybe certain areas trying to revise that you've been struggling with, but all of a sudden someone has explained it to you in a certain way, and all of a sudden, boom, you understand it? Or maybe you joined a certain course, maybe you joined the combo course and you're lost before the combo course, and then all of a sudden looks so complicated, and then all of a sudden someone explained this to you and you thought, wow, this is amazing, I understand it. Or perhaps maybe some notes, maybe you got some lecture notes, some summary notes from somewhere, the BNF or something, and all of a sudden all those things that you were struggling when you thought you're not good enough, you thought you couldn't understand, all of a sudden you're understanding and you're like, wow. So this to me was the revolution for me. It made me realize, and I want you guys to remember this is the key part of everything. If you're here today and you're saying to yourself you're not good enough, if you're saying to yourself your memory isn't good enough, or you're going to fail the exam, it is not about your ability. It's all about 100%, from my experience, and I'm going to show you now, it's 100% to do with your study technique. And so I had to learn a few things after that. I started to do the research. I got fascinated. And every time I learned about these new techniques, they completely blew my mind, because each time I started applying them, I started remembering a lot. So what I'm going to show you now is exactly what I found and what I use until this very day. I still use these techniques. And these are the techniques that help me remember so much that I teach you guys in clinical. Everything is designed around this. So, ladies and gentlemen, get ready. Get ready for what I'm about to show you. Some of these things may go contrary to what you knew. I had to actually set myself back with an open mind. So I thought I've been doing this and I'm struggling in my pre-reg year. So everything I learned at university, some of it was challenged when I read these articles, but I had to have an open mind. So I need you guys to have an open mind now, and you're going to find out certain things. So who is this session for? If you're struggling to recall information, if you're revising your notes, but you're not remembering, this session is for you. If you are failing mocks, so you're not getting above 70%, you're doing mocks, you're doing past papers, you're doing past questions, but you're still not doing too well, this session is for you. If you are struggling with time management, I'm struggling for time. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time to study. I'm so tired when I get back home. This is for you. I'm going to show you how through these techniques you could save yourself so much time, so much effort, make your life easy, and totally ace your exam. These methods are not only about passing the exam, they're about remembering things long-term, even when you're a pharmacist. The last thing is if you lack motivation, you don't know where to focus, you're feeling like, oh gosh, I don't feel motivated, then this session is for you. I'm going to show you things in this session that you've not seen before, you've not heard before, and also not just in theory. I'm going to show you in practice how this works. I'm going to give you a formula. I'm going to give you a 5-step formula that if you apply these 5 steps for your revision, I promise you 200% you will do a lot better. If you've been doing mocks and say, for instance, you're getting 60%, or if you're doing mocks and you're passing and you want to get better, this technique will help you increase your scores to about 20%. It's unbelievable. And every single thing I'm going to show you today has been proven by science. I don't do anything without, just like we do the combo course notes, you need to show me scientific evidence for everything, right? So all of this, I'm going to show you the evidence that these techniques, experiments have been done in the field of cognitive psychology. So let's get in. If you're ready for fun, give me a 1, give me a 1, give me a 1. If you're ready to find these methods out, you're ready to apply these methods, give me a 1, give me a 1. Type 1 in the comments, hit that like button, invite all your friends because we're about to start. Share this with anyone that you know because they don't want to miss what I'm about to show you. So I'm getting loads of 1s coming up, a slight delay, but I'm getting your 1s. I need to make sure you guys are still on there. This session is going to blow your mind. So get ready for this. So the number one reason, and this is from me, with all the years I've worked with all of you trainees, I've helped so many trainees pass the exams, so many of them succeed. You can see on our combo course reviews. And one of the key ways in my coaching, in my private groups, in my one-to-one, number one reason why students or trainees don't recall information has nothing whatsoever to do with your ability. It's because you study passively. I'm going to say that again. The number one reason why you don't recall information is not because of your ability, because you cannot recall information, because you've clearly shown that ability to be doing your foundation year. It's because of your study method. Now, this is what happened to me, and this is when I started to discover things were different. Most of us, throughout university, throughout school, no one has truly taught us how to study. I'm talking about scientific way to study with the evidence. So the ways and the methods that we've used are okay. They're fine because they've got you to where you are. But what I'm about to show you is going to make you even better. Right? So whatever strategies you've been using, some of you may have been using some of this, but you have to look at what you're doing now and ask yourself, assess yourself and see where you're going wrong. I'm going to show you throughout this session, three mistakes which trainees make that stop them from being at the best. I will show you 3 mistakes that I was making, and I'm going to show you how to sort those out. And I promise you, if you change this now, you're going to see a massive difference. I've worked with so many trainees, even in my private groups now. I already have one student. I have this one student. I only showed her this technique about a week ago, 2 weeks ago. And I spoke to her 2 days ago, and she said to me, literally within a week and a half, she's literally increased her scores from 68% that she was getting in her mocks to 86%, literally in 2 weeks. So let me show you how this works. You've got 2 study methods, right? You've got 2 study methods. You've got passive learning, and this is what's going to blow your mind. Get ready for this, people. Get ready for this. Have an open mind. So when I was learning, you've got a passive learning on the right, and you've got active learning. Now, what is amazing about this that nobody teaches you, not even at university, not even at school, not in your foundation year, no one teaches you this because they expect you to know it. But passive learning is the least effective method of learning, but it's the most common method of learning. It is the least effective scientifically in terms of remembering, because one of the reasons is through passive learning, it stays in your short-term memory. And I'm going to show you examples so you see exactly what I mean. How many of you learn by making notes? Give me a 2. Give me a 2 if that's you. You read through the BNF, you read everything, and you're making your notes. You're making notes and notes. You're making notes of maybe our combo course, chapter 1, the G, I've made my notes. Chapter 2, I've made my notes, and you're making all these notes. How many of you learn by making notes? Give me a 2, or in fact, type of me if that's you. Type of me if you learn by making notes. You're making notes with the idea that you're going to go through those notes. How many of you learn by reading those notes? So once you've made the notes, you're going to read them over and over again, and then you're going to know the stuff, and then you're going to pass. Give me a 3 if that's you. So you make those notes, hoping that if you read them over and over again, then you're going to know the stuff, and you're going to pass. How many of you highlight your notes? You highlight maybe the BNF, highlighting. So I'm going to ask you another question now. How many of you, despite making all these notes, you still struggle to remember the notes? Give me a 5. Despite making all these notes and highlighting, you still struggle to remember and also answer questions in the Gphc exam or answer your mock questions. Give me a 5 if that's you, right? So I'm going to show you why that is. Most of us throughout school, and you're going to see something, the way you learn at university and at school is completely different from what happens with the Gphc exam. So you may do well at university and you may be so good at school and you've had all these A grades, but when you come to the Gphc exam, you're going to see it's different. So people, get ready for what I'm about to show you. So the first thing you need to see, the least effective method is what most of us do, including myself. I used to make a lot of notes and it used to take so much time. And I used to make my notes from the first chapter to the last chapter, 16 chapters of BNF, MEP notes. And at the end, I still didn't remember them. So making notes doesn't guarantee that you're going to remember the stuff. And then the active method, which I'm going to show you later on, that changed everything for me. Active learning involves active recall, spaced repetition, quizzing, flashcards. These methods have been shown to produce the most effective memory in your long-term memory. So I'm going to show you this. This will really blow your mind. That's why at university, most of us learn to pass exams. But once the exam is finished, you forget all the stuff. How many of you agree? How many of you, when you did your exam at university the first year, by the time you got second year, you've forgotten? By the next day, you've forgotten the things that you'd memorized the night before. So throughout university and throughout school, we've been taught to read stuff over and over again, because if you make notes and you read them over and over again, they're going to stay in your memory and you're going to pass. That works short term, but long term it doesn't. That's why most of us are struggling when we're doing our trainee pharmacy year. So active learning is the method that has been proven scientifically is the most effective method for you to learn, for it to stay in your long-term memory. So why is it that despite being the most effective is the least common? And why is that passive learning is the least effective but is the most common form of studying? Here's the reason why. So first of all, there's a difference. Active learning involves active recall, spaced repetition, quizzing, flashcards, rewording, while passive learning is just reading, rereading your notes, making notes, reading them over and over again, cramming, highlighting. I'm going to show you the evidence, and this is the reason why you're going to see why the passive method, despite being the least effective, many of us use that method. So passive learning is the least effective study method, but most common method. Active recall and spaced repetition is the most effective study method for long-term retention, but it's the least common. Why? These are the reasons why. Number one, how many of you, give me a 0 if you didn't get this. How many of you got taught at school or university how to study? How many of you actually learned how to study scientifically? Give me a 0 if you never had how to study. No one taught you at school how to study. Many of us don't get taught how to study. We just do it by what we see around us at school. Read your notes. You test it once, you pass your exams to school and think, yes, that's it. So one of the reasons why the passive is the most common is because of habit. We've just learned the way we learn stuff and we've stuck to that method. But how many of you agree that the Gphc exam is a bit different? Cramming doesn't work. It could work in a university exam, and you have things that you don't have to see again. You don't have to do those chemistry practicals, learn those, and you pass the pharmacognosy exam, and that's it, right? But everything you do in your trainee pharmacy year, you have to learn it long term, because you're not just learning to pass the exam, to practice as pharmacists. So that, number one, is the biggest difference between university exams and the Gphc exam, right? So the second reason is it's easier than active learning, right? So active learning requires you to retrieve information. This is the difference. When you're reading your notes, you're putting information into your head. That is passive. So if I'm reading my notes, I could just put things in my head. You're putting things in. In terms of recall, if you want things to stay long term, the evidence shows that retrieving things as opposed to putting things in, makes connections, and that's what makes you think long term, remember things long term. It's your ability to remember things that you've seen, and that's what makes you build those connections. The third thing is it's an illusion. How many of you have read your notes a few times? You've looked through and you felt that, yes, I know this stuff, but then when you've come to answer questions, you're not good enough. How many of you have had that type of me? Like you thought you knew your stuff because you've covered it, you've gone through your notes, you've read your infections chapter, you've done your CNS, but all of a sudden, then that's it. So how many of you had that? Fantastic. So what I want to show you is it's an illusion. Most of the time when you read your notes, you think, because it's what we call recognition and familiarity. Recognizing your notes and being familiar with the notes are totally different from understanding the notes. Right? Totally different. And I'm going to show you how to overcome that. And then the final thing why majority of people don't use these methods, they use the passive method, is simply because they don't know about these active techniques. So most of the time when I've spoken to trainees and I've shown them the active, they've gone, wow, Marvin, I wish you showed me this before. Mind blowing. Nobody actually showed me this stuff. I've always just done what I've always done, and I thought that was the best method. So lack of awareness is the big reason why many people still study passively. So let's look at the evidence. Never take anything, like I teach you guys in the combo course. Never take anything from any pharmacist, from any tutor, from anyone, a locum, without asking them for the evidence for that. So someone is teaching you something, you want to ask them, okay, that's fine. Can you show me this information in the NICE guidelines or in the BNF? So what I'm saying to you now, I wouldn't talk to you without showing you the evidence, the scientific evidence and the studies that show exactly what I'm saying, right? So it's not just a personal experience. I've used my experience to get all these results, but also I want to show you the science behind it. How many of you like to see the science behind what I'm saying, to see the backing, to see the research behind the passive technique that we've been doing and the active? Give me a yes. Type a yes if you want to see this. This will blow your mind. Ladies and gentlemen, get ready for what I'm about to show you. Some of you, your revision is just going to go up a level right now. It's about 90 of us on here, and about 90 of these people are about to transform the revision strategy. So here we go. Mistake number one. I'm going to go through mistakes, and I want you to type down if this is you. Many of us, when I was training, we do all our reading and make notes first, and then we do questions at the end. If that's you, type a one. Type a one, be honest, right? If that's how you revise, right, and that's the first mistake. Many of us, and that's how we've learned, we make all our notes, make all your notes, make your own. In fact, you hear people tell you, don't answer any questions, don't do any past papers, don't do any questions. Make all your notes first, do all your reading first, and then once you've done all your reading, then you can start answering questions. Give me a 2 if that's you. In fact, 1, yes. Give me 1 if that's you. So I work with so many trainees, and these are one of the first things that I change, and you can start seeing results straight away. So this is what many people will tell you, and this is what we've probably done. Let's make all the notes, and then we're going to start doing questions. But there is a problem. There's a massive, massive problem with this. This is mistake number 1. So based on the research, this is what the research says. This is the many experiments done in the field of cognitive psychology, memory, and retention show that doing questions before, what we call pre-test, during and after reading each topic enhances your understanding and retention. I did not know this. So I used to read like everyone. I'll make my notes. I'll make all these notes, hoping that if I read my notes over and over again, I'm going to understand. That's the biggest mistake you can ever make. Based on the research, you need to do questions before what we call a pre-test. For example, if you're going to study the cardiovascular system, you need to try a number of questions, not a lot. You need to try maybe about 7, about 10 questions before you even start reading that chapter. And let me tell you the reason why. How many of you have been given a question? Maybe you're trying to revise, you've seen a question and you thought you knew the answer, but then you found out later on that your answer was wrong. How many of you had that? Now, when that happens, you tend to remember the correct answer more because you got it wrong in the first place. How many of you had that? Give me a yes, give me a yes, or just give me a yes, give me a me, write something. Hit that like button if you're learning something new right now. How many of you, and that is the advantage of what we call a pre-test. Because many people, you will be amazed how much you learn by getting things wrong. So if you gave yourself, you're going to read on the cardiovascular system, if you're going to read on, say, angina, what you do is you answer a few questions on angina. It doesn't have to be many, maybe about 7 or 8, and see how you perform. You're going to think, yeah, I know this answer, it's B. And then when you find out, oh, it's not, it has a higher chance of staying in your brain longer compared to if I just told you the answer. So this scientific research has shown that we recall information and we retain information more before, if you do a pre-test, during and after reading each topic, because that enhances your understanding and retention. Gardner says, I did a pre-test, nearly cried, which is good. Because when you get it wrong, Gardner says, I did a pre-test, nearly cried. That is the difference. Many people get scared to do pre-tests, and you think because you've got it wrong, you're not good enough. No, this is when your learning begins. Okay? When do I get questions from? I'm going to show you this at the end where questions could come from, but you can get questions from anywhere. There's so many questions out there on any chapter you want. This just have to be any question. It doesn't have to be exam questions, but just any questions to see how much you understand an area. You even have questions on the Telegram group and all of this on different BNF chapters. If you read on angina, you've got questions on angina, right? So you could test yourself. So this is the first thing. This is science. So let me show you guys a study that was done. I don't know if I can make this bigger. Okay. So this was a study just to show you how important this is. So they did a number of studies on students. They had 2 groups of students, right? So one group of students, they read the same information, just like you're preparing for the same information for your exam. They read the same information and they had a test at the end. So a test like in a day's time and a test a week later. So they gave them the same information and they had 2 groups. One group read the information. All they did was read through the information. They read the information 3 times, just like you go through your notes over and over again. They read the information today, they read it again tomorrow, they read it again on Wednesday, and they had the test on Saturday. Okay, so they read it 3 times before the test. The other group of students only read the information once. Okay, they only read the information once, but at the end, they had questions, right? So one group of students had no questions. All they did was read the notes, but they didn't answer any questions. And they did it 3 times. The other group of students read this once and answered questions. When they took the test, the students that read once and answered questions performed 20 to 30% better than the students that had read it 3 times without actively answering questions. This is science. This is the research shows that questions are the key to understanding, not rereading your notes. You could read your notes in many trainees. I'm going to show examples. I've worked with so many students that have read the BNF about 4 times, but still cannot answer questions. You have those that have read once, but they can. So practicing test questions, testing yourself before, during, and after reading each thing you study increases your chances of passing better, 20% to 30% better than those that only reread their notes. So that's science, that's the research. You could look into this. So mistake number 2. And at the end of this, I'm going to show you how you put all of this together to have a very, very good strategy to apply now in your revision for a Gphc exam. Apply all these principles. And this is what I did. So the first thing I did when I learned the first thing was I started to ask a lot of questions. All my notes were full of questions. If you're not asking yourself questions, you haven't understood the information. So mistake number 2, rereading your notes several times increases your understanding and recall. This is a big mistake. How many of you have read the notes so many times, but you still don't understand? Give me a one, give me a one. How many of you gone to your BNF a few times, but you still don't understand? You've made your notes and you've read them twice, but you still don't get it, because even when you do questions, you're still struggling with questions. You're not able to make those connections. How many of you type a one? Type a one. If that's still you, type a one. So you've read your notes a few times, but still struggling to understand. So rereading, which is the method that most of us learn and what we do, it has been shown to be one of the least effective ways to remember information scientifically. So here's the evidence for this scientifically. It says rereading is the least effective study method compared to active recall. It gives a false illusion of mastery from recognition and familiarity, but does not increase recall of facts, concepts, detailed understanding, or link creations. The only thing that does that is quizzing yourself, is questions. Right? So this is important because many people and many trainees I work with, when I ask them, okay, your exam is in a month's time, and I ask what you've been doing, I'm still making my notes, Marvin, I'm making my notes. I'm just finishing my notes. I'm making those notes again, and I'm making them again. And I'm just reading over those notes. I'm reading over those notes again. Reading your notes without answering questions, and you think you understand. So that's what I mean by an illusion, because you're familiar with the page, because you've written it. You can look at the page and you think you know what's on the page. That's fine. But it is all different when you come to questions. So your recognizing is different from understanding. And also, this method has been shown, and this is a challenge for most students. That's why when the Gphc gives you questions that require deeper thinking and connecting chapters together and making links, many students that just read the notes several times still struggle. But only active recall, which I'm going to show you later, active recall is the best way to make those connections, and that could stay longer in your memory. So quizzing, as I showed you guys, quizzing increases your chance of 20 to 30%. So if now you're struggling, you've been trying to do mock papers, you're not doing too well and things, I promise you 100%. Ask yourself questions. When you're reading, it's all about questions. Okay, so I'm going to show you some of this. So this is the study and the science, right? So they compared, this is the final test performance. Two groups of students, again, one group of students did practice tests, like I'm telling you, the testing is the key, quizzing, and the other group only studied, read their notes over and over again. So I'm going to read my notes, read my notes, and read my notes, while the other group read notes, just little notes, but they all did practice testing. And what they found out, the students that did questions, they remembered more facts, 30% more facts than those that just read the notes over and over again. They had a better understanding of concepts, about 30% better at understanding concepts and the recall of concepts compared to students that just read the notes again over and over. So that goes to show you that asking questions, this technique I'm going to show you right now, is the way if you want to increase your retention, if you want to understand facts and concepts, and if you want to recall this in the long term for your exam, then you need to study actively. Passive learning, just reading your notes, doesn't help you long term. Yes, it can help you pass. Yes, it can help you to pass an exam, but you're going to forget all of those things the next day. Okay, so this is another scientific research. Lots of studies. So I have so much of this, and I'm going to refer you, if you want to see the studies to know that this is actually proven, I have lots of articles I was reading. So you had the limited benefits of rereading educational texts by Mark McDaniel, a calendar, very, very good in the field of psychology. Test enhanced learning in the classroom, long-term improvements from quizzing, repeated testing procedures, superior transfer of learning relative to repeated studying. All of these there's lots of scientific research, lots of experiments that have been shown that these students that study this way perform outstandingly. And these are all from science. From my experience for training trainees for the past 5 years, for doing lots of one-to-ones with trainees, lots of private sessions, lots of coachings. I've taken many students like a month before the exam, and I'm able to build the confidence and help them pass. You can see all those testimonials on our Trustpilot and all sorts, okay? And the reason is because I apply these techniques to them. I know fully well that you have the ability. It's all about your study method. It's how you're studying. There was a book called Make It Stick, and I read this, and this changed everything. So this is a good book if you want to read more about it, The Science of Successful Learning. Again, lots of research, lots of experiments by like experts in the field. And this is what they found out: retrieval practice, so the act of remembering, trying to recall information as opposed to reading information, recalling facts or concepts or events from memory, is a more effective learning strategy than reviewing your notes, than review by reading. Why? Because when you try to remember things, then it strengthens new connections in your brain, and that's what helps to build that memory long term. Right? A single simple quiz after reading a text or hearing a lecture produces better learning and remembering than rereading the text or reviewing your lecture notes. Okay, and the same thing, I can see the bottom there. Let me make that a bit smaller. If I can see that, let me take this off. Let me take this comment off. Trying to solve a problem before being taught the solution leads to less learning, leads to more learning, even when errors are made in the attempt. And I'm going to show you guys good ways that you could apply this and how you can use this. So this is what I wanted to show you. So this is a little bit of what's happening at the moment. So if I said to you, so we're going to look at tennis. Imagine what rereading notes is like. It's like watching football on TV, right? Imagine if I told you I am so good at football. I'm the best at football. I know I'm so good at football. And the reason why I believe I'm so good at football is because I watch football every single day, 8 hours a day. I've never played. I've never been on the pitch. I've never kicked a ball, but I've watched it every single day on TV for the past 15 years, and I spend 8 hours in front of the TV, so I know I am an expert. I am good at playing football. How many of you are going to think I am delusional by thinking I've only watched football on TV? I've never kicked the ball. I've never been on the pitch, but I believe that I am so good because I've been watching this all the time. So watching the game is exactly like reading your text. Anyone who reads the notes and you think you've completed the chapter and you think you tick it off, wow, I've just done CNS. Brilliant, I've finished my CNS. You haven't finished anything until you've done questions, until you've tested yourself. You've not understood any topic until you've tested yourself. So testing yourself, quizzing, is like actually playing football. Is being on the pitch. That's what it is. So someone who does the reading and that tests themselves throughout is equivalent to someone that plays football on the pitch. You experience, you build the muscle from that memory. Compared to someone who just sits down and watches football on TV, is equivalent to someone just making the notes and rereading those notes and thinking you've mastered the subject. You cannot master anything without doing a lot of questions and testing yourself. So questions are the key to testing how well you've understood any subject. So I'll show you more. So the next thing I'm going to show you is called spaced repetition. I'm going to show you the mistake we make. So the act, like you guys said, the act of reading is good, right? We talk about reading. If I read something a few times, it's going to stay in my memory. But what the science has shown that you need to have a certain pattern. There's a way to read a number of times for it to stay in your memory. So if you're just going to read and read, I've read it today, I've read CNS, and then I'm going to read infections, then I'm going to read the next thing. And then once I've done all of that, and then I'm going to come back again, and then I'm going to start again and read it again, and I'm going to do questions. If that's what you do randomly, then that repetition doesn't work. So people talk about practice makes perfect. That is not true when it comes to reading. Perfect practice makes perfect. Not practice. You could practice, but if you don't do it in the right way, it is not going to help you. So spaced repetition, this is mistake number 3. I told you the 3 mistakes. This is the third one. Many of us review our notes randomly. Right? So how many of you have read something and then you have a time interval when you're going to read it next, about 3 times, even in a month? Because many of us, what we do is we read according to the chapter. So I've done the cardiovascular system, finished. Okay, I'm going to now do chapter 3, which is respiratory. I've finished that one. I'm going to do chapter 4. Fantastic, I've finished. I'm going to do chapter 5. But let me ask you a question. Once you've got to chapter 5, what happens to all the learning that you did for chapter 1 and chapter 2? What do you think happens? Type the answer. By the time you've read through the 16 chapters of the BNF and you've made your notes, what do you think has happened to your memory from chapter 2 once you're on the 16th chapter? What do you think happens to your memory? You've wasted so much time. Yes, that's the way that we've learned, and that's how we learn, and that's how we make notes, that's how we've passed our exams at school. But it doesn't mean it's the most effective, scientifically proven way to study. So yes, we've done this. Yes, this helps you. I'm not saying that reading your notes or making notes don't do that. All I'm saying is that there are better ways that could save you time, that could increase your memory long term, make life easy for you, enhance your motivation and your understanding of a subject, and help you totally smash your exam. So most of us do this randomly, but what I'm going to show you is something called spaced repetition, which has been shown again by the research. So it literally says, if you're someone that reviews your notes randomly, I'm just going to do this chapter, and I'm going to do the next chapter. And then once I've done this, then I think I'm going to come back to this chapter and then see, look at it again. I'm going to look at this one again. If you do that, then you are losing out, because the research shows that spaced interval is the method that helps you retain information long term. If you don't do spaced interval, you're going to forget your information very quickly. Umar says, you're being given gold nuggets here. Tell them, Umar. I'm giving you guys amazing stuff. And when I show you how to use this, nobody teaches you this. You're not going to learn this at school. No one taught us this. You just do what you see other people doing. You just learn the way people were learning, the way you learned at school, and that's been it. But I'm showing you what works scientifically so that you can question yourself. I could ask yourself, is what I'm doing scientifically proven, or is it just me thinking this is a method? Because your GPH exam is a whole different ball game from your university exams. I passed university exams without even attending certain lectures. You could get away with it. In the GPH exam, there's no getting away with it. You need to know your stuff. And not only that, there were many tests and many courses, many classes at university that were so not relevant. They were just there, but I knew that I would never use this for the rest of my life. But that's not the case with the GPH exam. With your revision now, or everything you're reading now will determine whether you're going to be a good pharmacist in the future. You will need all this knowledge from the BNF. You will need all this knowledge from your NICE guidelines. You will need to know about these calculations. You will need all this MEP knowledge. There is no hiding away from it. So spaced repetition. So this is the science. I'm going to show you what it shows. Then make that bigger. Okay. So let me just go back one. This is very important. I need you guys to see this. I really need you to see this. Okay. If I can take that. Okay. So Ebbinghaus, the guy I told you about, German psychologist in the 1880s. He was doing an experiment to see what makes us remember things and what makes us forget things. And this is what's going to blow your mind. And this is why spaced repetition is so important. So literally what this guy did, he did several experiments to find out how to stop you from forgetting information, or why do people forget information. So what he did was here. Can you guys see the cursor, type of 1? I'm not too sure if that, I don't think you can see that, but can you guys see my cursor at all? Type of 1 if you can't, type 0 if you can't. I don't think you can, but just type a 0 if you can't. But I was going to highlight a few places for you, but okay, no, that's fine. So what this guy did was they did experiments on a number of students, a number of people preparing for exams. And what they found out is generally, when you read a topic, right, say for instance, whatever you read today, some of you have read infections, you read something, you read MEP. When you read anything, when you study for anything, there is a window where you have to review that information. If not, you're going to lose it. It's so important that you know this. That's why I said we just do things randomly. There is a time and a set pattern when you have to review your notes so that it stays in your long-term memory. If you don't know this, most of the work that you're doing, you're losing out, because you're going to be spending time learning, but you're going to be forgetting the stuff. That's why we feel like I'm studying, I'm making so many notes, but you know what? I'm forgetting everything I'm learning, because there is a time limit at which your brain works for you to remember information. And that's what this is all about. So this curve here is what you call the forgetting curve, which was discovered by this guy, Hermann Ebbinghaus. and is one of the most popular, one of the most revolutionary studies of all time until this very day. So what he found out, if you see where we are at the top of the graph, you realize that forgetting on the graph, when you read something, 100% you're retaining that information once you read it. 20 minutes later, right? So it's exponential. Within 20 minutes, you've forgotten almost 40%, in fact, more than 40%. Within 20 minutes, we forget about 60% of the information that we've read. Within 1 hour, we've forgotten 60% of the information that we've read. So anytime you sit down, you're making notes and you're reading, if you're reading and reading, once you read for the first time, you retain it, but within 20 minutes, that's already a decline. Within an hour, you forget about 60% of the information you've read. So just think about that. And then 9 hours, within a day, after a day, they notice that you only retain about 30% of what you've read. So all this reading that we do, if you read now, within 1 day, you forget about 70% of what you've read today. And then the curve starts to even out a little bit. So 1 week, you're still looking about 20%, and so it evens out. So literally, from what they notice is that when you read any topic, you're declining. The memory is literally disappearing. So you have a window. So within 60 minutes, you forget almost about 60%. In 1 day, you forget about 70% of the information. A week later, by a week later, if you've not looked at that information, you've already forgotten about 80%. So think about this. Most of us studying, this is what I used to do. You're going to read one chapter, and then you're going to move to the next chapter. So you're going to read cardiovascular today. You're not going to look at the notes anymore until you've done the next chapter, and you've done the next chapter, and then all of a sudden, all right, let me look at cardiovascular. If you don't have set intervals to review that information, you forget all of it. At least you forget 80% of it. So the good news for you is that they did the science and they found out how you can actually retain most of that information so that you don't lose it. You hold it in your brain. And that's what we call spaced repetition. You have to review at certain intervals. So this is what they found out. So if you just read any information and you don't review it within an hour and within a week, then you forget the information. You only remember about 20% of it. So any of you that's reading something that you're not good at, if you read something you're not good at and then you waited 1 week to read again, you're only going to retain 20% of what you spent your time reading. So this is the curve. This is what they found out. Unfortunately, the cursor doesn't work for you guys to see. I would have highlighted that for you. But literally from this curve is showing that what happens here is to do with time. So those that read, they tested this with a couple of experiments with a certain few students. Those that read and then reviewed the notes an hour later. So you've done your reading now for the difficult things. You've reviewed it an hour later. They retained 100% at that time, right? So the way you keep the notes in your long term, 1 hour later, you're still maintaining at 100% if you reviewed your notes. We looked previously here, we said an hour later, by the time you get to 60 minutes, you've lost about 60%. You've lost about 60%. So here, if you review that notes within an hour, you have a chance of retaining 100%. Then if you did that within a day, so the next day, if you reviewed what was difficult that you're trying to learn, you increase that again by 100% retention. So by reading your notes again an hour, reviewing an hour later, and then a day later, and then 1 week later, you still maintain it at 100%. And then if you did about 2 weeks after that, then you're still at 100%. After that, even if you forget the information, you will still retain about 90%, between 80 to 90% of information long term. If you do not do this at these intervals, this is what's going to happen to your memory. So 31 days later, if it came to about a week later, you will only remember 20%. While someone who did the intervals and they did this, when you get to them about a week later, they will still be remembering 100% of the information. But how do you do this for 16 chapters? I'm going to show you exactly that at the end. So this is spaced repetition study. How many of you have noticed this as well? And it happens when we did a combo course, myself, one of the reasons why we have lectures spread out throughout the week, as opposed to giving you guys one massive study day. How many of you have had like a study day? Like 9 hours or 10 hours of study. So how what happens in those days? Do you remember the information? When you spend like a whole day, you spend a whole study day, you've learned everything, you've learned all this cardiovascular, I've learned all these calculations from 9 o'clock to 5 p.m. How much information do you think you remember? So what science has shown that spaced repetition, they did again test with certain students. With one group of students, they were reading the same thing. They had to read the same thing, but one day, group A read for 7 hours. So you looked at the same thing for 7 hours, the same information, 7 hours, and that was it, and they had to take the test. The other group, for 7 hours, but they spread it over 1 hour a day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, all the way. The group that spread the information performed far better than those that did everything in one day, that spent 7 hours. So it shows that spaced repetition, by spacing your revision, you increase your chances of retention and your performance compared to if you did everything in one day. Hence the reason why our combo course with Uma takes about 16 weeks. So it's 12 weeks increase, that's about 16 weeks. And we have lessons almost every day of the week, right? We have like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because it's spaced, right? We spaced it out because we know that that increases your retention. We could have just put everything in one day for you and say, okay, once a week on a Saturday, we're going to have all of this, but we know fully well, based on science, that is the worst way to learn. So how do you remember better? So this is again from the science, a guy named John Medina in his book, Brain Rules. How do you remember better? Repeated exposure to information in specifically timed intervals provides the most powerful way to fix memory into the brain. Deliberately re-expose yourself to the information more elaborately and in fixed spaced intervals if you want the retrieval to be the most vivid it can be. Learning occurs best when new information is incorporated gradually into the memory store rather than when it is jammed in all at once. Uma and I have been preaching this for a long time. Those of you on the combo course, you know fully well, we always tell you start early. You hear people tell you, oh no, don't start your revision now, wait till January. Take your time and get to know the pharmacy and learn all these processes. This is the worst information anyone can give you. These people are talking from experience, but nothing from science. Because science says if you spread your information out, start early so that you could space repetition, you could get spaced repetition, so that when it comes to exam, you perform outstandingly. Students that space the revision over a period of time always perform better than those that crammed it all together. So even on the course, that's why we designed the course this way. So now I'm going to show you how you can apply this, because some of you are asking, how do I do this for 16 chapters? And you're going to see now. So benefits of active recall and spaced repetition. This is the most effective, scientifically proven technique, active recall and spaced repetition. Because it's going to improve your memory, you'll notice that you'll be performing a lot better in your mock scores. You have a deeper understanding of concepts. You save yourself time. You have more confidence. You'll be more motivated and you'll pass. Someone asking, is it too late? Absolutely not. I had a trainee. I've got so many on my private sessions. I could probably get all of them here to tell you. And I've shown some of them this just last week. And they've moved from getting about 69%, the 60s to 80s already. It is not too late. If you're doing exam in June, you have enough time to apply these techniques. It's going to increase your chances. You can either have something that is easier that can help you do better, or you can stick to the same way and hope that in the exam, you're going to smash the exam. So how do you apply? Let me show you how you apply this in 5 easy steps. How many of you want to see the 5 easy steps to apply it now? I told you, I don't just give you theory. I'm not someone that just gives you theory. I love practice. I'll give you a bit of theory and I'll also give you practice. So let's go to the 5 steps. Give me a yes if you want me to go to the 5 steps now. I'll give me the yes. Hit this video, like this video if you're learning something new today. And I will show you now practically how you can apply this in your revision starting from today and to make it work for you. Great, I'm getting loads of me's. Give me the yeses, give me the me's and the yeses, and we can go straight in. So, step number 1, the first thing you need in order for you to succeed, the first thing, many of you on the combo course, you are fine with this part. So those of you on the combo course, doesn't matter what course you are in, the key to pass your exam, the first thing is you need very, very good, concise, good quality notes or resources. That is the first step. So what you want to do now, you can start writing the steps down. Practically, I'm giving you guys the formula that's going to help you pass. All of you on the combo course, you have no issues because the combo course notes, as you guys know, are already high quality, and we've designed them based on these scientific principles. Okay, so first thing you want to do is find yourself very good quality notes. And the resources, you look at the recommended resources. So maybe your BNF, your NICE guidelines, get the good resources and get the quality notes. That is step number one. And I'm going to show you what to do with it. So all of you with the combo course notes, I'm going to show you what I do with my combo course notes, what you can do as well. So let's look at an example. How many of you guys want to see an example? Give me a two, give me a two, give me a two. If you want this example, if you want me to go through step by step, you're here to look at this and say, Marvin, show me how to do it. By the way, how many of you are on the combo course? Who's on the combo course? Type of me. If you're on the combo course, then this is easy because you already have all of these notes, right? So those of you, Sabada, Hind, I was Hind, I know it's Hind now, isn't it? We had that talk together. Hind, so I'm getting loads of you on the combo course. Sarah, all of you on the combo course, then you don't really have to search for those. Okay, you already have those quality notes. So here, this is what I'm going to show you. Those of you on the course, they can see how this works. So those of you on the course, I'm going to show examples. So it's an example of our notes. So we're going to start with the first chapter of our combo course notes. We've got arrhythmias. Okay, what is an arrhythmia? If you look at this, most of them are in question format. Right. So what is an arrhythmia? And then we have this. These are our notes. The notes are concise, they're easy, they're colorful, straightforward, highlighting key things that you need to know. So that's an example. Okay. So now what you do, I want to show you guys what to do. Take your notes, whether you're on the combo course or not, doesn't matter. Wherever you have your own notes, this is what you should do with the notes. The first principle of active recall is all about questions. Questions help you understand and retain things long term. So rather than making notes and writing everything word for word or writing things from lecture notes, what you want is to do step number two. Okay, step number two. What the abnormal rate and reading, love that I still remember. Yes, abnormal. I see you still remember abnormal rate and reading. That's on the combo course ARR. We have two R's. A for abnormal, R for rate and rhythm. You still remember the stuff, and these are all the techniques that we use because mnemonics and all of this help to retain in your long-term memory. So great stuff, great stuff. So you guys want to notes. I don't need to go to the combo course notes, but this example. So what you do with your notes, the second step is you need to convert them into questions. Gartner says, explains why you give us questions before each antibiotic. Exactly. And the combo course next year, Uma and I are already working on it. The combo course, those starting next year, we are changing the combo course. We're literally adding more of the scientific things. We're literally going to change the way we do the combo course next year. It's already so good, and we're applying these techniques, but we're literally taking this now to a whole different level. So what you want to do with your notes, so all of you on the combo course and all of you on your own with your own notes, you need to change your notes into questions. And I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm going to show you an example. So let me use the combo course notes because we just looked at arrhythmias. This is what my notes look like. Those of you on the combo course notes with me, my notes or my summary notes are not like this. These are not my summary notes. These are my lecture notes. This is exactly what my notes look like. The first thing I do is I convert all of these into questions. And these are some of the questions. What's an arrhythmia? What's normal heart rate? What is pain in pocket? What is new onset AF? What are symptoms of AF? What are the causes of AF? What are treatment options? Which medications? Every single page of the combo course, I convert those to questions. They're all questions. Do not read notes. Answer questions. That makes sense. Do not read notes. I don't read notes. I don't go to the combo course and I think, okay, fine, I've got my notes. Okay, let me read. I don't do this. An arrhythmia is an abnormal rate or rhythm of the heartbeat due to some problem with the electrical conducting system of the heart. Okay, memory trick, arrhythmias. Okay, everything I do is all about questions. And those in the combo course, you have some of those questions there, right? Because why? Because in your exam, it's all about questions. It's all about retrieving information. So the way I read this chapter, I don't reread my notes. What I do is simple, is this. I go to my questions and I'm just answering these questions. If there's any question that I cannot answer, I go back to the notes and I highlight this. So, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with this later on, because you have to follow these steps. So turn everything into questions so that going forward, you're not reading notes, you're answering questions. You're testing yourself. Remember, I showed you guys a principle that information, if you try to think about information before you look at it, it stays in your long-term memory. So these are my combo course notes. These are literally my notes on arrhythmia. And I've got the answers. Okay, and I've got the answers. So next thing is, once you have the questions, you need to have your answers. On the combo course notes, we have the answers because all of us are questions to the answers. For instance, let me show you what I mean. It's very easy for those of you in the course to do this. If you're not on the course, it's fine, but you have to do this with notes. Literally, I have what is an arrhythmia. Okay, that's the answer there. Right? What are the symptoms of arrhythmias? Those are the answers there. Right? Okay, would you like a memory? That's a different question. What are the causes of arrhythmia? We have the answer. So in your notes, rather than writing all of these things, all you have to do is write those questions down. And that's how I have loads of questions. And all I'm doing every single day is I'm answering these questions. If there's any question that I cannot answer, I'm going to highlight it in red and I'm going to tell you why, because of spaced repetition. All right, so those that you can answer, they go into green and they're fine. That means that you can review them later on because you know that stuff. If not, you find yourself repeating things that you know and you're going to feel that you know the stuff, but you're not looking at the other difficult ones. You wouldn't know the things. So my revision is effective. Because if I have to come back to study, it saves me time. I don't have to come and read the whole of arrhythmias again. All I'll do is come and read the ones I've highlighted that I did not know when I was answering these questions. I don't need to read the ones that I know because I'm fine. Someone who doesn't have this will still have to read the notes. You have to read all your notes again and think, okay, let me read this. Let me test myself. All I do is I come to the questions I've highlighted red. So number 2, flashcards. Right? So a flashcard is an answer to each question. That's the flashcard. So I've got a question. What's arrhythmia? What's the answer? That's your flashcard. Okay. Grace says, this is very timely, Marvin. Fantastic. I'm glad to hear that. This is very timely, and this is for you. You have enough time, Grace. Use this. It's going to make such a difference in your revision. And I'm going to tell you something that will shock you, because some of you think, oh, how am I going to do? I have time? But I'm going to tell you something at the end that makes your life so easy. And all of you are going to go, wow. So some of you might be asking, all right, how do I make the flashcards? Do I have time to make these flashcards? So you have a question and you have an answer. That's your flashcards. The mistake that many people do, and I used to do that, is your idea of a flashcard is more summary notes. Okay, I'm going to look at the summary notes. I'm going to look at the notes. Sorry, I'm going to look at notes. I'm going to write everything down. Shortness of breath, abnormal, fast, slow, irregular heartbeat, dizziness. Okay, this is actually my little memory card, and I'm going to move to the next one. No, don't do that. Your cards are meant to be so short because you don't have time to be going through many notes. All you're doing is answering questions, a card and an answer. Now, to let you know, it's easier and it's better you do it online rather than keep writing flashcards. You cannot keep writing. That's old school. Get with the times. All right? Stop writing things down. Stop writing flashcards and writing. Although writing has been shown to help you as well with memory, times have changed. Do it online. You do it online. Make your online flashcards. You don't have to write everything. I will save you time. And I'm going to show you something that will blow your mind as well, that many of you go, wow, this is really cool. So turn everything into questions, step number 2. Step number 3, so you have your questions, turn all your questions write the answers down for every question, and that is a flashcard. So one question and an answer, that's one flashcard. Another question, answer, another flashcard. As soon as you start learning from now on, do not read, keep reading your notes. You should only be answering questions and testing yourself and testing it. That's how it stays in your long-term memory. So once you've made your flashcards, this is from the book Make It Stick with the evidence. Trying to solve a problem before being taught the solution leads to better learning, even when errors are made in the attempt. Many of you on the private sessions that we're doing, we did a private session, just to show you guys the difference. We have our private sessions, we use different styles, right? So many of you, when you revise, you go to those past papers that have A, B, C, D, E, the answers. That is good, but sometimes it has its drawbacks. Because many times when you answer questions, you don't really understand, but you're doing an elimination process. Or you have hints and you have clues because you have to look at the answer and you go, all right, I think it's this one. But that doesn't mean you understand. That's simply because answers have been shown to you. Because how would you answer that question if you had no answers shown to you? How would you answer a question? How would you think? So on the private sessions last week or this week, all of them private session, we actually did contraception, but we did it without question and answers. We had questions and we had discussions. So we have to use two techniques, flashcards, and that's why flashcards are good, because they're not like your typical, this is a Gphc question, this is a mock question, these are the answers, A, B, C, D, E. I'm going to look at the answer, oh yeah, it's B, and you get it right, and you say to yourself, wow, I know this stuff. No, you don't know the stuff, because you're answering from the answer on there. You only know that stuff if you answer from recall, from memory. So let's look at flashcards, and this is a part I really want to show you. How many of you have heard of Quizlet? If you've heard of Quizlet, give me a 1. Those of you who have been doing one-to-one consultations, I've showed you most of this, and I told you, if you haven't, put a 0. If you haven't heard of Quizlet, put a 0. If you have, put a 1. Quizlet.com. You need to use this website. If you've heard of Quizlet, put a 1. If you've used it, put a 1. If you've never heard of Quizlet, put a 0. If you've never used it, put a 0. So what I'm going to do very quickly is I'm going to show you what to do. So remember, I said to you that like I've got Noah that says 0. Okay, let me show you this. I've got Gardner says 0. This is your time. Those of you putting 0, this is going to blow your mind. I've got Olawumi says 0. Fantastic. Uze 0. Let me show you something that is going to change your studying. Hind has spoken to you as well. You know about this. I went through this with Hind. Bobby 0. Fantastic. Now, let me show you what you need to do. Making flashcards could take time, right? Some of you have been asking me. I didn't want to answer that question. Oh, do we have time? How can I do it? Is it too late? Let me show you it's not too late. Rim says 0. Azoma says 0. Brilliant. Brilliant. So let me show you guys something now. This is what you should do. There is a website, Quizlet, that has loads of flashcards for you. So let me test you guys. I don't know if I can share this. Let me see if I can share this on my screen. Let me know if this is sharing. Quizlet. I'm just going to take one of these chapters. Let me go back a bit. Okay, I can't see your comments now, but can you guys see that sharing? Is it sharing? Quizlet, is it sharing? Let me look at your comments. Give me a yes if it's a sharing. Give me a yes. Give me a yes. Give me a yes if that's sharing on your screen. Give me a yes, because I'm about to show you something that will change your revision. So those who don't know about Quizlet, go into Quizlet and type in BNF. Okay. You type in BNF in Quizlet, this comes up. You have loads of classes and study sets. These are flashcards. So scroll down on the BNF, scroll down, and then go to classes. You guys say classes? Give me a 1 if you can say classes on here. So go to classes, you see university, an example, University of Nottingham has got 40 study sets. Click on this, 40 study sets. You see all the chapters of the BNF. Someone said, oh, Marvin, 16 chapters, how do I learn this? You have all the chapters of the BNF. These are all done for you already as flashcards. Remember, you need to also make sure it's up to date, because some of these obviously the older BNF versions, we have to always make sure everything's up to date, right? But most of them are still very up to date. So choose a chapter. So I'm going to choose a chapter, but I want you guys to choose a chapter. So can anyone tell me any chapter they're good at? Tell me one you want me to choose. Like, oh, I think I've covered this in the last few days. I think I've done this stuff, Marvin. I've read either infections, I've read something. Put a chapter down that you guys want us to look at. Any chapter from anyone that you think, this is my chapter. I've finished this, Marvin. I've covered this chapter. I've covered infections, Marvin. I can test my infections. I've done cardiovascular. Anyone. Right. So Monica says nervous system. Zara says respiratory. Let's look at nervous system. Let's just take nervous system just to show you how this works. Let's take nervous system. So let me get back on this. Right. So if we take nervous system, if you click on nervous system, this comes up. Right, so what do you want? You have different topics on nervous system, different topics. So let's take maybe epilepsy, because this is what people struggle with. You click on epilepsy, now you have a flashcard. Now you have a flashcard. So flashcard number 1, what is epilepsy? Sudden urge activity of neurons in your brain. Flashcard number 2, before you look at the answer, you try to answer this. What are causes of non-epileptic seizures unrelated to abnormal electrical activity in the brain? Anyone who just reads this straight away from the notes, you're not activating your brain. Your brain, in order to build long-term memory, it needs to be challenged with questions. The more you try to think of the answer without looking at your notes, the longer it stays in your long term. So if you've covered this chapter and you've ticked it off, This is the test to see whether you've actually understood and whether you remember it. So you try to get the answer and then you go in. Once you try to get the answer, click on it, it shows you the answer. Right? And then you could go to the next flashcard. What are the types of seizures? What are the types of seizures? You have to actively try to think of the answers without looking at the answer. So you write it down. Everything has to be from recall because that's how it stays in your brain. That's how your brain forms networks. So you think about the answer, see if you got as many down as possible. If I give you more question, I'll give you A, B, C, D, and E, and you'll be able to choose. And you think, oh yeah, I know the types of seizures, but you don't know because the answers have guided you. With the flashcards, you have no guide. You have to think and bring everything back out. The reason why this is important is because your exam is not a test of inputting information, it's a test of retrieving information. Your exam, they're testing you to retrieve what's in your head. So by using flashcards and by doing this, all you're doing is preparing yourself for retrieval, activating your brain, building your brain muscle, so that when you go into actual exam, your brain is already in a retrieving mode. So those are your answers on there. So simple, concise, straight to the point. These are the sort of things you want to be using leading to your exam. Not reading loads of highlighted notes, rereading, because the science shows that that is the least effective. Science shows that flashcards like this and answering questions and looking at answers, this is the most effective. And try to answer them without looking at the answers. Very good. I'm getting good answers there. So I'm going to stop sharing that for Quizlet. And let me see if I could bring my slides back on. So is that clear? So go on to Quizlet and use flashcards. Those of you asking, do I have time? Yes, you do. You go on there, flashcards, and you have loads of flashcards for every single topic you could think about. So step number 4. So I said we have 5 steps. Step number 4 is what we call spaced repetition. So someone asked me, how do I space it out? So remember I said to you that when you look at that curve that we looked at with the forget curve, if you don't look at information within a day, you forget everything. You forget as much at the end. Within a week, you only remember about 20 to 30%. Okay? That is so important. So this is what you do in order for you to remember things long term. This is the key thing. The mistake we made, as I mentioned, most of us read things randomly. We don't know the fixed time to review our notes based on the science of memory. We don't know that. So we just read our notes whenever we need to review them. When we've done everything else, we finish all of the chapters, then we'll come back to review the notes. But in terms of science, there are specific times you have to review something that you've learned that's new if you want it to stick in your memory long term. So here are your times. So what I showed you guys before with the arrhythmias. So when you've done a flashcard, for instance, these are my flashcards. Once you've done your flashcard, any question that you've tried to answer that you don't know, you highlight that in red. That's what I do. I highlight it in red. While those that I know that like is good, then I'm going to go green, green, green. This is just an example. This is not like I've just highlighted it randomly, but just to show you have the 3 different colors. So I've got red for those that I don't really know the very top. I have to go back to look at them again. What this means, and spaced repetition, the ones that are harder, you have to review them more than the ones that are easy. So if I've answered these green ones and it's easy for me, I know this stuff now, I don't need to keep looking at it again. It's a waste of my time. I can review it again in a month's time. But the things that are hard, like this one, if I thought I'd try to learn this and I cannot remember, oh my gosh, CNS, a few things I've tried to learn and I don't really remember, you have to review them often. And then it's like a traffic light system. And then the yellow is like in between. Okay? Very, very important you know this. So that's how you do it. So you focus on the red areas rather than reading all your notes again. Okay, you focus on the red areas. Let me see some of your questions. This we have about, literally we're going to go to the last one very soon, the last tip. So this is an example, and this is used by algorithms. So some of you are asking, oh, how do I do all of this? The good news is you've got Quizlet, but you also have some apps that already do this for you. So like the Anki app, I've just typed it on there. You have an app like an Anki app that helps you. They have everything already for you as spaced repetition. When you read something, it then flashes at fixed times to help you stay in your long-term memory. So you could look at your Anki app. So this is an example by an algorithm used by SuperMemo, which again, another app that you could use to have your notes in there, your flashcards. Then it's going to arrange your flashcards based on how well you've done at each of them. So it brings it regularly at certain fixed times to help you with your memory. So If I read this read chapters, then 1 hour later, I'm going to look at my flashcard again so that it stays. A day later, I'm going to look at that flashcard again. Then 1 week later, so you have fixed days and fixed times. 1 week later, you look at that flashcard again. 16 days later, look at that flashcard again. When you do this, this stays longer term. You retain about 80% of the information. I remember flashcards are not like notes where you need to spend a long time learning. Because you follow that sequence, it will stay longer in your brain long term. Day 35, you look at that again. Those of you that do the exam in, say, June, perhaps you only have this 1, 2, 3, 4 days to do that. Those of you in November, you have up to day 35, and you need to have set intervals to review information. If not, it is not going to stay in your long-term memory. So someone said, how do we type increase? Let's just type in BNF. I showed you, just type in BNF, and then you can see all those questions. So finally, the final step, which is the easier one, which most people do, but people leave this to the end, is just doing questions, practicing. So this is where your mock papers come in. This is where your quizzes, your mock papers come in, and you do this under time conditions, and also you want to teach. An effective method is to teach. You can either teach a family member, or you could teach your dog, or you could teach your cat. It doesn't have to be a human being. If you've got nobody, you can stand in front of the mirror. But the idea is, if you cannot explain something like to a 5-year-old, then you've not learned or understood that well. Right? So the best way is to teach out loud. Once you've covered a topic and you've done these questions, you then have to try to teach this, and imagine you're teaching this to a 5-year-old. 5-year-olds like asking why questions. So why is this? Why is that? Ask yourself questions. So when you do that, it stays in your long-term memory. So the final step is, obviously, these are not quizzes, because quizzes, you do them throughout. But these are like your mocks that you do under time conditions, 40 calculation questions or 120 clinical. You test yourself under time conditions and you see how you perform. On the Telegram group, we have, on the period shortcuts, you have Gphc questions. So these are questions that have actually come up by the Gphc. So they're not the exact questions, but students that have done the exam have written some of the questions that came in the exam. So these are more effective studying first than even your mock papers. Many people don't even know about these Gphc questions that students have compiled from the actual exam itself, which is a very big shame, right? Because these are the ones that are more real, they're more realistic compared to mocks that could make you bipolar. Don't read too much into mocks, because one mock you might do so well, another mock you'll be awful. But these questions, these specific Gphc questions, the questions that students have attended exams, they've come out and they've written what was tested in the Gphc exam. These are the ones you want to start with, because how can you pass an exam if you don't know exactly what those writing the exam are looking for or what they test? So you want to look at that. Those are your Telegram group, Period Shortcuts Telegram group. Simply go in there and just type the Gphc previous questions, and you see loads of them from 2021. You have 2021, you have 2020, 2018. These are where people start. And I teach so many strategies with so many trainees, and I help them one-to-one, and I take them to this place and I show them these questions, and we focus on there. It's going to give you confidence, and it's going to give you a more realistic indication of where you are compared to all of these random mocks that we do. So that's the 5th step. So that's the 5 steps for you. Loads of success stories, loads and loads of success stories. Many people have trained using these techniques, right? So many. There's a girl, right? There's so many. There's one that failed exam twice. She read her BNF 3 times, but still failed. Attended all live lessons, live classes when she was doing her training, but still failed. All I had to do was to change all her notes into questions, right? And she started active learning, and she totally aced the exam. I can't even begin to go through, all you have to do is just go to Pre-Read Shortcuts, and look, we have over 100 testimonials of people that were totally lost, trainees that didn't have a clue. I've had trainees that have come to see us 1 month before the exam. They don't even have a clue. I've not read, I'm confused. And just by applying these principles, got them to pass with no doubt. So those are your 3 methods. Remember this is a summary. Remember your most common mistakes. Read and make all notes for first over a few days. That's what people do, right? So they read and then they make all their notes first over days and over weeks and over months before reviewing. That's the first revision mistake. Don't do that. Keep asking questions before you read anything, whilst you're reading, after you're reading, and then do those the last one, number 5, which is do your mocks. Okay. People don't have any set time for intervals. So because of that, when you read, you forget information, and all that learning that you've done has gone to waste. So give yourself intervals, right? So the common intervals that we use are 1 hour, 1 day, day 7, day 16 for difficult things that you don't remember. Put it up in your phone or use one of the apps, Anki apps. They have everything in there for you. They're going to arrange that for you. It's going to flash up to you, your flashcards. You know when to see the difficult stuff again. So the many apps that are there now that incorporate active recall and space repetition for you. And all you have to do is use one of these apps for your revision, and you totally ace your exams. Do questions at the end. So many people and many trainees I work with have done all the reading and all the notes and doing all of that before they start answering questions. And then when you get to questions like, oh my gosh, I don't even feel like I've learned, I need to go all the way back and start again because I cannot answer questions. So questions have to be before you start revising, before you start studying any chapter, whilst you're studying it, and after. It's all about questions, because questions will test you and they will keep things in your long-term memory. Remember, you don't have to look at your notes. You have to try to recall what you've already seen. All right. So once you made it, try hard to recall, because the harder you try to recall, the stronger the connections are made in your brain before you look at the answer. So other memory tips to help you stress. Stress is very important. If you're stressed, most of you know, if you're stressed, you forget stuff. So you need a lot of stress relaxation techniques. Everyone on the combo course, we have loads of sessions leading to the exam on stress management, on anxiety, on relaxing you, because this is so important. Many people don't realize this, but many people fail the exam not because it's difficult, but because either they run out of time or they misread questions due to anxiety. All right, because when you're anxious, you might not see things properly. So we show you how to relax and how to de-stress few days leading to the exam. Sleep is important. Unfortunately, for most trainees, you have less sleep closer to the exam. But what happens when you have 2 hours or 3 hours sleep to your memory? What happens to your memory if you had 2 or 3 hours sleep? Your memory is difficult to remember anything with such little sleep. Okay, so memory works with sleep. So you need to have at least 6 to 8 hours sleep. You need to eat healthy. You need to de-stress, try to manage that stress and anxiety, and then teach the information. You don't have to teach to someone. Teach it to yourself, standing in front of the mirror. As I mentioned, teach it to your dog, teach it to your cat, but try to put things in your own words. Teach the notes in your own words. If you do that, that means you fully understood, it stays in your long-term memory, and you remember that in the exam. So to summarize everything, 3 common revision mistakes. Do all your reading and your notes first, and questions at the end is a mistake. Do questions throughout. Number 2, rereading notes several times increases your understanding. We've seen from the evidence that it doesn't. Rereading your notes doesn't, but what does is answering questions and space repetition. Reviewing the notes randomly doesn't work. You need to review them at space intervals. Okay, so very important for all of you. I hope this helped. So the summary of the 5 steps. Active recall, that's a summary, is the most effective, most scientific, proven method for you not only to learn information, but to be able to retain it long term, to be able to apply concepts, which the GPA exam will be testing you on. It's also the best method in terms of giving you that confidence, that motivation, and preparing your mind constantly for retrieving information. So the 5 steps is: number 1, get yourself a very, very good, up-to-date, concise notes. As I mentioned, those of you on the combo course, you already have these. If you're on the combo course, use whatever notes you have, but make sure that they are so good, so up-to-date, and easy to follow. The next thing is number 2, change all those notes into questions. Don't read your summary notes all the time. Instead, answer questions all the time. Turn the questions into answers, have your questions and answers, and those are your flashcards. If you don't have time to make your own flashcards, just go to Quizlet like I showed you, and you could use some of those flashcards. And then you have apps like Anki app where you could build flashcards. Number 4, space repetition. For anything that you struggle to understand, you have a set time when you have to review it. Don't do it randomly. Do it at those times that have been shown when your memory declines the most. Okay? 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week from now, 16 days from now, 35 days. And then finally, Step number 5, once you've done all of this, then you're ready to answer those mock questions under time conditions. So obviously you'll be looking at those mocks throughout, questioning yourself. But step number 5 is when you actually sit down and do a full mock under time conditions. That is step number 5. In terms of questions, people are asking me where do I get questions from? There are so many places where you can get questions from. Quizlet, you don't pay for it. I think you can subscribe to Quizlet, but most of the information is free. All right. So Quizlet, most of the info is free, and those flashcards, I think you can subscribe, but I have to check because I don't pay for it. So I have to check to see how much. But even if you do, it'll be so minimal. Nothing compared, it'll be so minimal to join it. So what advice will you give with less than 5 weeks left to the exam? So this is the advice I'm giving you with less than 5 weeks left. And Ola Woman, if you've not watched my video, I did a video about 8 or 9 weeks ago, and it was about 8 weeks left to the exam. Look at that video because it's still the same principle. Watch my video on YouTube. 8 weeks left to your exam, what do? It will be the same principles, but you may have to do more questions. So what advice I give 5 weeks left before the exam, the first advice will be you have to study effectively, which is all what I'm saying. You have to do active learning rather than passive learning. It means that at this stage, rather than sitting down and making loads of notes and rereading your notes over and over again, what you want to be doing is answering questions. Try to answer from memory, have your flashcards, focus on the most important things. This is a whole session that I do with my trainees, but I have slides upon slides that I could show you the key things. If you didn't have enough time, the key areas to focus on. I don't know if I have one on my list here. I have to obviously pull it out, but that would take some time. But I've got a list of the key things, and I've done that with some of you already, and most of them have passed the exam. If you're running out of time, there are certain areas that whatever happens, you have to focus on. And if you focus on those areas, your chances of passing are so high, so high. I shall be sitting the next year, June. What shall I do? Oh, fantastic. So you even have more time to prepare, more time. If you're sitting next year in June, you have a lot of time. You can join our course, which is going to be so revamped, our combo course in November. It's going to be a whole different level because we're applying a lot of these techniques in there now going forward. Well, we've been already doing that, but now we're coming out with a whole new strategy that will not only enhance your learnings, but also enhance your experience. So if you're doing the exam in June, if you're interested in joining us, then you could join us in November when we start the combo course again, or you could join any other course that you want to join. But right now you want to practice, keep practicing those questions. If you finish your university already, then that's good. If you're university in your final year, then finish your final year exams first. But if you're starting your trainee pharmacist year in the summer, then you could check out our reviews. You could join us. If not, again, it doesn't have to be us. There's so many other training companies out there, and join whichever one you feel comfortable with. And yeah, have a good plan for yourself. We have a lot of things that we show a lot of trainees from October. We do this throughout the year, and we show you how to pass exams, what to focus on, and also literally how you can make the most of your time. So Oza says, is there any way of seeing actual previous GPC exam questions? Unfortunately, there isn't, because you don't get the actual GPC exam questions. And even on the GPC website, they give you sample questions, but still, those are the only ones the GPC provides. The only way you could see those questions are not the actual questions, but there are students that have come out from the exam and they have used recall to write down the areas that were tested. So they're not the exact questions, but they can at least show you the areas that get tested, and there are patterns and there are some con areas that get tested by the GPHC. So any more questions? So I think that's the last slide. So thank you all. Use this method. Wish you guys all the best. Visit our website if you've not heard of us. So those of you already on the combo course, many of you are, prepregshortcuts.com, www.prepregshortcuts.com. We're going to have more sessions coming up for motivation, for exam techniques. I think we have our Previous Shortcuts ambassadors doing another session on Wednesday. So subscribe to the channel, hit the link, notification, so that once we go live, you will be notified. Is it necessary to join a company? What would you advise? I will say this to you, right? I will say this, and people are surprised when I say this. I always say this to everyone. You have to ask yourself, are you fine studying by yourself, right? If you're fine studying by yourself and you have your notes, you could do everything by yourself. Fantastic. You don't need any company. You don't need any training provider. If you have your GPS, a framework, you could do all of this stuff by yourself. Yes. But if you want it to be facilitated for you, if you want someone to facilitate, to make the slides for you, to show you the easy things, then yes, join a provider. So what we do, for instance, when people come to the Prepregs Shortcuts, many pass, right? So many. And the reason is we don't tell anyone to join our course, right? We're not going to pull your arms. But what we do tell you is if you want things made easy for you, if you're someone that maybe you're too busy, you want simplified notes, you want these techniques, you want experience, you want people to show you where to answer questions, what to read, summaries, and all those things, then that's what we do. And that's what I can do for you. But do you need to have a training provider to pass? Absolutely not. You could pass on your own without using any of the training providers out there if you're ready to do the work by yourself. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Rim. Great. Let me see any more questions. For Anki, do you have to make your own flashcards? So I think with the Anki app, you need to subscribe to them. You can make your own flashcards. You have to make your own flashcards, but I think with you could transfer some of the flashcards over there. So the Anki app is a good app because you use spaced repetition, but I think you have to make your own flashcards. I don't know if they already have set flashcards, but I'm sure you can transfer some flashcards to the Anki app. Is it necessary? Okay, I've answered that question. Okay, thank you. Thank you, all of you attended. Thank you. I hope this is helpful. Very helpful, informative, and changing lives. Many thank you. You're welcome in. Thanks for attending. Thank you so much. For those who thinking about joining the group, I couldn't recommend it enough. Helps so much. Thank you, Uze, for that. Thank you for your recommendation. Thank you. We love working with all of you. And as I said, you have to find out for yourself, right? So Uze is giving a recommendation, but find out for yourself. We have so many people that at the end they come to us towards the end and go, "Oh my gosh, I wish I joined you. I joined your course earlier. I wish I did this." And we say to them, "We're always there. We do so much. There's no one else that does as much free stuff online like we do. There's no one. There's no one that does as much free content online like Prepregs Shortcuts. If you could find one person online that's got so much free content, then let me know. But on YouTube, we have over 100 and something free videos. We do loads of free webinars. We have a free mailing list, all of this. So we do this. We go to universities so that you know about us. So if you don't know us and you don't find out about us, then it's only you to blame. But those that have found us have loved it. Thank you for your recommendation. It was I really appreciate. Does anyone access to Telegram group? So the Telegram group, these are those on combo course, right? So the Prepregs Shortcuts Telegram group is for those that are enrolled on Prepregs Shortcuts course, the combo course. Those are not enrolled. You could just get our free content on YouTube, but it's nothing compared to the course. On YouTube, you still get a lot of value, but this is just the surface. The course itself has the meat, the deep stuff, and the interaction, and the engagement, and the combo course is just, those are on the combo course, you know what it's like. I don't need to say, you know what it's like. You know how we do it. What we got? Does everyone have access to question bank? So the many different questions out there, just as long as you have loads of questions, make sure the questions are up to date. More recent questions. Even if you look, you don't even need to subscribe to question banks. The many on Telegram groups and all these WhatsApp groups and pre-reg chats, the many drop boxes with loads of links to loads of more questions and past questions and all of this. As long as it's recent, up-to-date questions, going back, maybe don't go back more than 2019, stick to about 2019, 20, 21, then you get loads of questions and just answer those questions. You even have in those groups, you have like quizzes on the BNF. So you got loads of things that are just quizzes on each chapter of the BNF. You can use that to start your pre-test and throughout quizzing yourself, but it's just so much resources. The problem with the training, with the foundation here, it's not lack of resources, it's instead too many resources. So you never lack questions or finding questions or question banks. What you have is just too much. It's more of which ones do I choose as opposed to where do I find. Please join the combo course. You are guaranteed passing. Oh, thanks for that recommendation. Ola Wonmi, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Yes, guys, thank you all so much. All the best in your exams. I hope this helped you. Use active recall and spaced repetition and absolutely crush your exam. See y'all later. Thanks. Bye.